And while that's going live, do let me know where you're up to in the divorce process. Have you just started? Is this something you're thinking about? Are you already in the process? Again, it's always good to know from you where you're up to, because that way we can make sure what I'm talking about today is absolutely spot on for you. So I'm going to share my screen while you are letting me know where you're up to, what's coming up for you, anything like that, so that I can be sure who's in the room and what's going on for you. So I've got a direct message. I'm thinking about it, which it takes a lot of thought. It's one of those things that you really need to, you'll agonize over it for a long time before you can make that decision. Thank you for your direct messages coming in. There's quite a few of you saying that you are thinking about it. Okay, so we're skipping. So how do you make this decision? And I've just got a question. Do our names come up on the live screen? I've seen on YouTube. It's an unlisted video on YouTube, so it won't go public. It's only for the purposes of a replay. And I think the chat box does come up, but I can't be sure. So if you're unsure about that, if you don't want your name coming up, then send me a direct message, and then I won't say your name out loud so that we can keep you anonymous. Okay, so lots of you will understand that this is a stressful emotional journey. And even in the process of thinking about this, even when you're in a situation where you are considering whether this is the right thing for you, it's really emotional. It's really difficult to process everything that comes up for you. And making that decision, again, it's so difficult. And thank you for the direct messages still coming in. I'll definitely answer your questions. This process, when you are thinking about it, when you're agonizing about it, there's so many things that are going to come up for you. When I went through my own divorce, and I'll tell you a little bit about me shortly, when I went through my own divorce, I agonized about this for many, many years. It was a decision that I really struggled to make. So now that we're talking about my divorce, that is exactly what happened to me. I went through my own divorce. About 12 and a half years ago now, I realized and I made the decision that my marriage would come to an end. I'd been married for 15 years. At the time, our children were really young. We've got three daughters. My youngest was 1 year old. So it was even more difficult to make that decision at the time. I was practicing as a family lawyer before then. That's my specialist area. And I believed that this would never happen to me. And it was quite naive thinking that it wouldn't happen to me. But I was under this impression that I would know all the pitfalls. And so therefore, I would be able to change things and my marriage wouldn't go this way. I believed in that fairy tale. You meet your prince, you get married, and it's happily ever after. And as I really found out, that's not how things work. And I found myself going through this same process 12, 13 years ago. But before that, I think I'd agonized about this for maybe 5, even 10 years. I should have known that this was coming, but I kept sticking my head in the sand. I kept putting plasters on it and hoped that it wouldn't happen. And to be honest, even that word was frightening to me. I didn't even want to say it out loud. But I had to really dig deep and make that decision. And I'll talk you through a little bit about how I made that decision. But it did get me thinking, going through my own divorce, that as a practicing lawyer, I only helped people in sort of giving clinical legal advice. And I realized very quickly that this is not just a legal process. In fact, it's so much more than a legal process. It's emotional, it's draining, it's practical, it's separating yourselves from each other financially, emotionally, all the different things that will come up. And actually managing your children and their emotions through it and keeping things going. It was so much more than a legal process. I decided that I needed to bring more. And I'll tell you a bit about that at the end. I won't take up time now talking about the services I offer, but I'll definitely touch on that at the end. During this process, your lives are so entwined. You've been married maybe for 10, 15 years, like I was. Everything was sort of mixed together. We had family, friends, the children, finances, our home, so many different things that you suddenly get so scared of making that big decision, because the decision brings with it all these actions and life being so different for you. You have a vision for your life. You have this vision that you'll grow old together, that your children will grow up and you'll get them married and you'll have grandchildren. And so it seems such a big thing because you are wiping away this vision of your future. And of course, you never got married with the intention of ever splitting up. And splitting up the family seems so impossible anyway. So many things will come up, and I'll go through some of the thoughts that I had, and maybe some of these things are coming up for you as well. Let me know if the things that I worried about are the things that you worried about as well, or if there's something else that was different for you. I remember thinking that my children will be so impacted by this, they're going to be affected, and I really didn't want this for them. And that's what stopped me from making this decision for many years. I believed that they would have anxiety, mental health issues, depression, that they would drop out of education, they probably wouldn't contribute to society. And that's what I believed that would happen to my children. I was worried about what people will say. And in my community, I believed that people would have so much to say about me getting divorced, and that people would talk, and it was shameful. And some of you may relate to that as well. I did think that I'd probably be destined to live alone with 15 cats for company, that nobody would ever have me, and our joint friends would probably slip away because this was too difficult. And so I had this vision of me being alone, and I can see some of you saying that as well. I was really worried about the finances. That was a massive thing for me because where the children were quite young, I'd taken a break from my career in family law to concentrate on bringing them up, allowing my husband, ex-husband now, to concentrate on his career. But financially, I felt really vulnerable because I didn't have an income. There was quite a lot of debt, and he gave up his job during this process. And so the finances were really scary for me. And what I had done was throughout our marriage, I had left it to him to manage the finances. And therefore, I wasn't in control. I had lost touch with sort of finances, even though I'd done this alone before. And so this really frightened me, understanding how everything might work. I thought I would lose all my friends. I thought that people would move away from me because of what I was going through. And I wanted things to be amicable, and I was struggling to work out how they could be. I was worried that divorce is really expensive, not only from a financial point of view, because you're splitting your one asset base into two. You've got two homes, you might have two sets of clothes for the children, you've got two cars, all of this, and then you've got only one income to manage this household. That was really frightening. And I hear from lots of my clients that they're scared of the legal fees because, people talk about spending 30,000, 40,000 on legal fees, which can be scary. I desperately didn't want to leave the family home. It was security, stability for me. And that really scared me. Will I have to move? And how will I manage it all? So I can see direct messages coming in, and I'll answer some of those as well. So some of these things may be coming up for you. And you'll recognize these fears that I had, and you'll have your own as well. But these are fears, and fear is something that will often stop you. Recently, I had an in-person event where it was all about fear and stepping into that fear, because divorce will bring up a lot of fear. And it's not just at the beginning, it's throughout. And even at the end, I hear about it. And we had this in-person event where we broke an arrow a steel-tipped arrow with the soft of our neck, and we had to push it and break it against a wall. And it was so scary because this arrow would not bend when I tried to break it with my hands. It was quite big, thick, and I was really scared. And I had to step up to do this first because I was hosting the event. And I had to really think about what I needed to change, the fear that I needed to break that was stopping me. And by thinking about this fear and knowing that it was just a thought helped me overcome this fearful action that I was about to take. And I was able to break that arrow. And it reminded me that stepping into fear is so important. We're all going to be scared, but these things are thoughts. These things can be resolved. And one of the things that you can do to help you with all of these questions and all of these fears that are coming up for you is to get clarity on some of them. So it may be that you're worried about finances. And with finances, if you work through certain steps and really do your research and start putting together the numbers and the proposals that you could put forward, those things will give you clarity. And with clarity, you can work out what you need to do. And sometimes the fear can step away because you're taking action, you're getting clear, you understand what your position is going to be like. And there may be things that we can do also to make things easier for you. So it is something worth doing. Clarity on your situation will really help you. And even things like, I'm scared about how much time I will have with the children. Getting clear on what the law says about children. And I do a session like this on children, I think that was last week. Getting clear about what the law says about children, how you reach arrangements around children, what that could look like for you can help you reduce that fear. Some things that obviously you have to get used to. So your children may be away from you when they've never been away from you before. And that was something I had to accept, that my children would spend possibly every other weekend away from me. And I was really scared of this. And it was because I felt lonely without them. And I had to go out and meet that fear head on and work out how I was going to fill my time with things that brought me joy. And there's certain fears that we have that are just not the truth. So things like worrying about what will happen to the children, the effect that it will have on them. Obviously, we do need to be concerned about these things. We need to keep an eye on them. We might need to get them support if they are struggling. But me expecting that they would not be in education, that they wouldn't contribute to society, that isn't the truth. That could happen regardless of me getting divorced. My children are in education. 2 of them are at university. And my eldest, who is now 22, is in her 3rd year and she's got her graduate position ready in banking. And so all of this stuff that came up for me when I was going through my divorce wasn't true. It didn't necessarily mean that my children would drop out of society. A lot of these fears that we get aren't the truth. It's things that are there to scare us. It's our brains scaring us. And certain things you just have to deal with that, family, friends will be there for you, but maybe other people will talk about what's happening. They will have a judgment, but they don't live your life. And if this decision is the right one for you, you mustn't be scared. You have to think about your life going forward. And I know that somebody said here that they were scared of being alone. And that is a fear that I had. And I decided that I had a choice about how I wanted my life to be. There's so many groups, there's so many social activities for single people, people going through divorce, single parents, groups based on interests, even single people holidays, traveling on your own. I don't think that as long as you are willing to put yourself out there and go and get these new experiences, I don't think you necessarily have to be alone. But it's also good to have some alone time, because this is also a time that your life is changing. You need to heal and spend some time on your own, be sort of thinking about where you want to be. So just some different things that came up for me, and it may be that they will come up for you as well. I want you to make decisions based on fact, not on fear, because fear has this way of sort of making things so much bigger in your head. To think about different things like that. There's no right or wrong decision when you think, is divorce the right thing for me? Staying could be right for you, and leaving could be right for you, as long as you've thought it through properly and carefully. And I'm sure that all of you will be doing that. If you're in that process where you're thinking about it, and I've had so many direct messages from people here that are saying they're thinking about it. If you're in that position, staying is right and leaving is right. It's just what is the right that is for you. And also, staying is hard. Staying in a marriage that isn't perfect is tough. And divorce is tough. You just have to choose your heart. And there's lots of ways of thinking about this. I had to do, when I was sort of umming and ahhing, I had to do lots of things to think about it. And one of those things was all around, what will my life be like in 1 year? What will my life be like in 5 years? What will my life be like in 10 years? And I did this thinking about if I stayed and if the marriage came to an end. And when I looked at what my life would be like between now and 10 years if I stayed, I knew that it would be the same. It wasn't going to necessarily get any better, but there was a chance it could get worse. When I thought about my life if I left, there was a bit more possibility. And I knew in year 1, it was going to be tough, and possibly up to year 5 even, as I was rebuilding, stabilizing. But I knew that my future looked promising, and the things that I really wanted, which was peace, which was joy, my children living in a happy environment, I could make those things happen if I left the marriage. The other thing I did was the advantages and disadvantages of staying. And when I looked at the advantages of staying, I realized very quickly that I was saying things like my children would live with their dad, I wouldn't have to sell the family home, financially it wouldn't be tight, and it was more factual, not emotional. There was nowhere where I said I would really miss my husband, I can't see my life without him. There wasn't anything like that. And the advantages of leaving were quite a lot. And when you look at it like that and you write it down, visually, I could see what my answer should be. Even though it was hard for me to make it, I knew that I had to make that decision, and I could see what that decision was. And then I made sure I got support in taking steps forward. But you have to make the right decision for you. So how can you make this decision when your brain is full of thoughts, fears, worries? You're probably not sleeping at night. You're worried about so many things, and there's lots coming up for you. And I speak to people every day that are thinking about divorce or have moved onto that step of actually, starting to take action. And there's so many things that they're worried about. And I completely get it because I've been there. So what did I do when I went through this? And some of you will have lots of things that you have tried when you try and clear your head and try to make it easier for you to make decisions. There'll be lots of things that you've tried. And when I was going through this, the first thing that I did was movement. And movement for me was not an exercise class. Financially, I was in a really difficult place. So I couldn't really afford much, but it was getting out in nature. I did a lot of that. I started running. I felt the freedom, the wind in my hair and the sun in my skin, and I could literally forget everything. And then at the end of the run, I could sit quietly and process some of the things that were coming up for me. So just moving like that really helped me. But moving in nature is very grounding as well. But even, dancing in the kitchen with the children while we're washing up and tidying up, even things like that is movement. It's really good to have loud music on. Anything that you enjoy can really help you. It can help you start getting clear. It can help you process some of your thoughts. So try something like that if you haven't tried it before. I know some people will say they go on dance classes to help themselves out because something like that is quite easy. It's movement, but it's laughter as well. So thinking about things like that can really help. Are any of you using movement right now to help you with your mental health, to help you clear your mind? It would be really good to know. Running, brilliant. I loved running when I was going through this. It really helped me. Having a podcast or some good music on at that time was brilliant. I have a PT twice a week and hot yoga. That's brilliant. That's great things to do, yoga. I've heard a lot of people using yoga during this time. It'd be great to know what benefits you get from yoga. I've never really done it, so I don't really understand how that feels. It would be great to know what you think. I started meditating at this time, and meditating may sound like something you do with your legs crossed for half an hour or an hour. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It can mean mindfulness. But I found that actually sitting in silence with my thoughts, maybe looking out of the window, listening to the birds, anything like that felt like meditation. I felt present. I was able to calm my thoughts, and it really helped me. But if you would like to try meditation, a guided meditation to start off with can be really good to as a starting point. And I used guided meditations, say 10 minutes in the morning, that depended on my mood. So if I was feeling anxious, I would use it for that. If I needed something for focus, I would use it for that. Sometimes for healing, white light of protection, all of these things that I felt I needed on that day, I would look for a meditation on, and I would do 10 minutes. And it really helped. Initially, I struggled to clear my thoughts. It was just thoughts rather than listening to anything. And what I would put on is a candle and look at the flame, which somehow seems to quieten your thoughts because you've got something else to concentrate on. So it's definitely worth thinking about this, because reducing your anxiety levels right now, whether you're thinking about it, you've started, or you're halfway through, it doesn't matter. These things will really help you. Yes, guided meditation with Abraham Hicks is very good as well. Lots of my clients commit to doing this for 10 minutes a day, and they are really telling me that it gives them so much peace. Once you finish that, you can actually do some writing, because it may be that with that time to silence your thoughts, you will be able to write down everything else that comes up for you. And I found writing for 5 minutes really good. It gave me a place to brain dump everything that I was scared of. It gave me a place to put my emotions. And those things that I was scared of, I revisited and I worked out why I was scared of them and what I could do about it, and whether it was something I could control or not control. So lots of my clients say to me they're scared, if they're still living in the family home, that the other person will get aggressive or intimidating. And there are things you can do about that. Certain things are not in your control, and you have to only concentrate with what's in your control. And what it could be in your control if the other person is aggressive is, do you report it to the police? Do you report it to a domestic abuse charity? Are you going to protect yourself in some way within the family home? Or is there certain things that you could ignore if it's not too bad, and you're not going to let them affect you because that behavior is there to upset you? So we have to look at what we can control and the actions we can take. And sometimes that can really help you quieten things down, because writing your fears down can help you work out what you're going to do about them. So I did a lot of that, emotions and fears and thoughts. But what I found writing really helped me with as well was logging events, which can be really useful for the future. In a couple of years' time, you may forget certain things that are happening now. You might forget even in a few weeks the detail of how you felt in that event, how the children felt, what was said, the date of it. So I use this, my thoughts and my emotions and what was happening, even as a log for those things to use later. So it can be quite useful to do. You might be worried that if you write things down on a physical notebook, that the other person, if you're living with them, they might find it. And that is a concern. So lots of people will write it on a laptop, write on an iPad, and password protect that note. So it's not possible for anybody to see it, even if they have the PIN code for your laptop or your iPad. So think about writing these things down. And obviously there are these things, pros and cons, and visualizing what your life will be like with your partner, your husband or wife, and without your husband and wife. So you can visualize those things and write those things down as well. But actually visualization is quite a powerful tool. I had an action that I needed to take this week, and I was really worried about the outcome. And I spent time visualizing that it was going to be the outcome that I wanted. And I believed that it was going to happen. I truly believed it had already happened. And seeing that clarity in my mind, I was really excited about this thing that could possibly happen. And it did happen, and I was so pleased. But I felt like visualizing it helped me take steps, helped me get clear about how it would feel to have this happen, helped me get clear about how I felt about it and what might need to happen, but also who I needed to step into for that event. So it was such a powerful tool, and that was just over the last couple of days. But I get my clients to visualize where they're going, what their priorities are. And we talk about this throughout, because sometimes when things are getting tough, having that vision of what you're working towards can keep you going and keep you almost getting clarity about why you are going through this. So what next? You've done lots of thinking. You've agonized over this decision, and you might decide that actually you're not quite ready to end the marriage, and that's okay if that's a decision that is right for you. It might not be the right time now. And I do have to qualify that with there's always something going on, so it's never the right time. But you might decide that actually you want to work on your relationship. You want to see if there is that possibility of things working out. And if that's the case, if you're thinking that maybe it could work, then you could think about marriage counseling to help you with the things that have been difficult in your marriage, because it can help you communicate better. It can give you strategies to work on to try and repair what's been going wrong in the relationship. You can have therapy individually. And again, when I went through this, when things weren't going right, I concentrated on what I needed to do and how I needed to feel, so that I was able to process things better in readiness for this in case it happened. It helped me heal a bit more and helped me move forward when the time was right. But you need to find a way to communicate better, because that's usually where the problems are. It's difficulties in communication. So trying to work on how you will communicate, having empathy for each other, might be something you could work on. And I know there's lots of good communication coaches out there that can help you as a couple work on that. You might need to spend quality time together to find these shared interests and improve your relationship that way. But if you're not sure about what you want to do, it's okay to say, I'll give myself 6 months and I'll think about it some more. As long as you almost give yourself an ultimatum, because what will happen, and what happened with me, was that I kept putting the decision off because it was easier putting it off. The children are young, and I'll do it when this happens, and I'll think about it again when that happens. And actually he's, being okay right now, so I think everything's going to be fine, and I'll put it off for a while. And I put it off for so long. So there's never a right time, but giving yourself an ultimatum that you will sit down and make that decision can really help you. Otherwise, you'll just keep putting it off. And it might be that your decision is you're going to stay, and that's okay. But ultimately, you want to make a decision either way. If you think your relationship is over, you may have come to that conclusion that actually this is not what you want. This relationship has served its time. I need to move on. Then you've got a few different choices at that point as well. And the first is separation to start with. And this might be, you look at this for a few months. It might be that you tell your ex-husband or wife that it's going to be 6 months. It's going to be a year that you need time. Or you might not put a specified time on it. You may just say, I need a break. We need to separate for a bit to give ourselves time to think, maybe get back together, or maybe move this forward to becoming more permanent. And you don't need to make all the decisions straight away. You may decide you're just going to take it day by day and see how things go. And I'll talk to you a bit about the difference now around divorce and separation. If you have decided the relationship is over, should you just start divorce proceedings straight away? Or should you separate for a bit and then start divorce proceedings later? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. You have to work out what's best for you, as long as you understand the consequences of what you are doing. So what's the benefits of separation? It gives you time to think, which sometimes is important. You might feel that you need some space to think things through. And it also feels like a smaller step than saying this is over permanently and let's get divorced, because that might feel more overwhelming. The separation could be short-term. It doesn't have to be long-term. And you may be talking to your husband or wife about how things are going, whether you give it another shot, you move back in together. So there could be discussions around what's happening. If you have an agreement around finances, say for the short term, it may be that you discuss who's going to be paying the mortgage in the short term, who's paying the bills, how will you fund the children's expenses in the short term, what bank accounts will you use. You can put that into a written document or email each other with agreements around that, so you can have something in writing. The problem with a separation agreement is that they're not legally binding. Anything you write down when you are separating is not final. So the other person could change their mind. They could do something different to what you had hoped or what you'd agreed. So it's not legally binding. If you get divorced, if you are moving towards a divorce process, then as part of that process, we can make your financial agreement legally binding with a financial consent order if you have reached an agreement. And this can mean that you won't claim on each other again. You won't claim on each other's estates. And literally that agreement that you came to is legally binding. The other person has to continue with that regardless of their thoughts. So the benefit of divorce is that it is legally binding. Sometimes people prefer to start divorce proceedings straight away, because when you separate, and say you separate for 6 months to a year, it's quite painful. You're going through a transition. And then when you get divorced, you can be sort of going through that all over again. And if you have made the decision that it's over permanently, you might just be of that mindset that you want to get things sorted out properly right at the start, rather than making this process much longer and prolonged and more difficult. You might just think, I want to get divorce proceedings now, and it would be better just to make sure this happens properly now. There is no chance of us getting back together. But also we can then finalize how your assets will be split permanently, so that once you have come to that agreement, there's no changing of minds. With a separation, it's possible for you to change your mind. You might also be going through a situation where the other person is hiding assets, moving money around, selling property, moving shares, selling property abroad, whatever it is. And if that's the case, you really need to do what's called financial disclosure if you don't trust the other person. And financial disclosure is being transparent, both of you being transparent about your finances. And it is part of the process. And so if you are going through a divorce, we would go through this thing called financial disclosure, where you would provide details about your finances, and the other person does as well. And so therefore we minimize that chance that you've given the other person 6 months to a year to move money, to get ready for a divorce, to sell property, sell shares, hide things. So it does make it easier to find things if you are getting divorced straight away. So that's some benefits on divorce and separation. They're obviously a little bit different, but you might decide you separate for 3 months and then you get divorced, which is absolutely fine. Or you might decide that divorce is it. You need to end this right now. You may as well just get it all done. Another thing to think about when you're thinking around this subject, is divorce right for you, is understanding a little bit about the divorce process and what is covered. And I'm only going to go through it quickly just because of time. So the divorce process is made up of three distinct parts which come together. The first bit is the ending of the marriage, which is the divorce. The second part is arrangements for the children, if you have any. So you need to decide what you will do around the children, how much time you both spend, depending on what's best for the children. And then we've got the finances. And the finances are your assets, anything that you own in your name, the other person's name and joint names, as well as debts in your name, the other person's name and joint names as well. So we look at all of this, we work out how things would be shared, and then we make it legally binding as well. So with all of this, with your finances, once you've got proposals, we would put that in the financial consent order, and that completes the process. So that's the distinct elements to the process that you would be dealing with if you're looking to get divorced. So hopefully that gives you an idea of, is divorce right for me? Should I get separated? Is it fears that are stopping me? Are these fact? Are they truth? Is it just thoughts that are here to stop me moving forward into where you want to be? So different things to think about there. And do let me know what you took away from that. Was there something that really hit home for you? Are there some thoughts that you're having that you would want to get clarity on? And while you're doing that, I'll just tell you a little bit about how to work with me. So I have a 6-month support program, and this fixed fee program is low cost. It brings a group of people that are going through divorce. It is a group program. And the way that it works is we have group calls where I am helping and guiding you individually about your situation. So you need to jump on a group call every week, and I talk about what's happened last week. We move it forward onto what's going to happen this week. What action can you take? What clarity do you need to get? How do we look at your finances? What research do you need to do? So all of this we talk about, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's involved in it. I'm not your solicitor during this time. I'm there as a support and a guide, but I do help you with communication, correspondence, documents, court forms, the divorce application. I help you with researching your finances, coming up with proposals, helping you negotiate. And this is all in a supportive community with other experts that come along to support you as well, like a financial advisor, like an emotions coach who can help you with your mindset as well. You don't necessarily need a solicitor through divorce proceedings, which people think you do. There isn't anything that you have to have a solicitor for. All the court forms can be signed by you directly. The only thing is the process can be confusing. You'll have a lot of questions. There are some documents that are really tricky to prepare. So you do need guidance and help through the process, but you don't need to be spending 30, 40, 50,000 pounds on legal fees to do that. But I'm happy to talk to you a bit more about that. And I have a journey that my clients take. When they start with me, we do some work on what their plan is, how they're going to go forward, a little bit about protecting themselves. And then we move on to the divorce process. And we bespoke this depending on what the client needs. But I help you with your divorce application and making sure that goes through the court. We go through your finances, understanding your finances, the other person's finances. We're working through proposals. So you have 4 or 5 options that you could put forward. And we really look at how to negotiate and agree these proposals as well. Obviously, the arrangements for your children are important, and we work through what they could be, and we put that in a parenting plan as well. And then you finish your divorce, and hopefully that will be as amicable as possible, low cost, but also in a way that is holistic and you feel supported. And we plan for the future and think about what your future life is going to look like. I get lots of good testimonials, lots of good reviews, which I'm happy to share with you, but I won't go through them in too much detail right now. But if this seems interesting to you, if you would like to know more about how I work, if you want to know more about this program and whether it's right for you, happy to have a chat with you. We can go through your situation. We can go through what's coming up for you and how this might help you. Because that's really important, that you understand what help you need and how it could help you. I've written a book, and the book is not just for you to read, it's for you to take action. Because what I am all about is action. With action, with clarity, you can move through this and you can take steps confidently. And so there's actually parts in the book that you can write in and start taking action, start getting clarity. And I'll just put the links to these things here, so you can contact me via these channels. Oh, my assistant's here and she's put that in for you. Thank you, Yuffie. Thanks for doing that. So feel free to reach out to me to see if the program is right for you. I'm happy to have a chat with you about that. And I'm just going to go through and have a look at your questions because I know that they were coming in. So first question, your sessions have been fantastic. Thank you so much. Always good to have that feedback. I've been thinking about this and I've mentioned it to him, but he says he will not sign the divorce papers. So this is my hurdle at the moment. And yes, we see this a lot, that they will not sign the divorce papers. But in reality, you don't need them to sign the divorce papers. It does make it easier if they sign it. They will have it by email. So it's a click of a button. It's not even printing something, physically signing it and posting it. They can click a button and tell the court that they've received it. That's what you're trying to get the court to see, that they have received it. They don't have to let you know that they're happy with it. All you have to prove is that they've received it. And the first way is by them clicking that button or filling in the physical form that they will have received. And if they won't do that, there's lots of ways of showing the court they've received it. One way is getting somebody to serve him with the papers. So a process server would go around with the papers, serve him with them, and write a report that he has received them. There's another way where we can prove that he's received them because he's actually entered into communication around the papers. Different things that we could do to prove to the court that he's got it or she's got it. The other thing is you can actually dispense with service. So you say to the court, there's a reason why I haven't been able to show him or her receiving the papers, and I want to dispense with that element. We have to decide depending on how it goes. And I give you strategies to use during that time. So don't let that be the hurdle, because that's an element of control as well. And so you can push this forward if that is what you want to do. I've made the decision to divorce, but at the infancy of my journey, I've accepted my decision, but my partner is still trying to understand my reason and rationale. And sometimes that is, the other person needs that because they are going through stages of grief. And so are you. Sometimes you're a bit further forward in those stages of grief because you've possibly been thinking about this longer, you've processed it. The other person maybe is coming to the reality of this now. You may have mentioned it for a long time, but they may not have accepted that decision. And now that you have said that I am doing this, they will start going through those stages of grief. And the first stage is denial. So you need to give them time. Yes, you have to talk about the reasons and the rationale behind it, but don't expect that they will always understand why, because otherwise they would have made that decision already. But quite clearly, they don't want this. They don't understand this, but it's something you want. So sometimes it's okay to be kind, but to move things along. So I've got a direct message. In the process of my mental well-being, I've come across a fantastic person who's been supporting me emotionally whenever I needed this. And this is something I should be getting internally from my partner, but that's not the case. And sometimes having a friend like that, that will support you, that will be there for you. And sometimes if they are the opposite sex, it can help you understand maybe how your husband is acting, being. And so sometimes having a friend that is male can really help. My kids are grown up and I need to live the rest of my life being happy and not miserable. Your views would be appreciated. And I'm not sure what the question is there, but I can see that you understand that your marriage might not be right for you. Have you considered whether there is things in your marriage that could be repaired? Are there things in your marriage that you could work on? Is it something you even want to work on? Sometimes we get to a point where you don't want to work on it anymore. So it's thinking about that. Is it something that you really want to work on? Do you see your happy life, your peaceful life without that person? So thinking about things like that definitely helps. But having somebody who can understand you really does help. But also having somebody who doesn't know you too well can give you a different perspective. So just bear that in mind as well. Another private message: my husband is not trusting me, and he's stolen my money from my account when I am sleeping at night. And he's doing this again and again, playing some games and taking my money. And at the end, and I need to take loan and credit card now. I am worried. And I completely get that you're worried. And one of the things that you have to do when you're thinking about divorce or going through it, is to start protecting things like this. You need to change your passwords on email, on digital accounts, your bank account, your Ring doorbell, security cameras, all of this stuff, maybe your PIN code for your phone. Because when you are going through this, there'll be lots of information that you're sharing, you're receiving that's private. You really don't want someone spying on you. And especially this, where they're able to take your money. So you need to start moving your money into a separate account that they don't have access to. Your salary should go into that. But your loan and credit card, it should be part of your financial settlement. So you are showing a liability in your name that actually wasn't done because of anything you did. And part of your financial settlement, you should get that paid off. And it may be that your husband has to pay that off or take on that loan or give you the money that will cover that loan. So that should be accounted for as part of your divorce, but do protect yourself. Legal fees were something that kept me from pushing forward with the divorce. And lots of people tell me that the fear of the legal fees can stop you. But actually, a lot of people are doing their own divorce now. Lots of people are starting to become empowered. And that's what these sessions are for, to give you knowledge and to empower you to take steps yourself. And obviously, if you need help, then I'm here to guide and support you on a fixed fee. Another private message: I want divorce. How can I say to him if I am saying that I want a divorce? He is saying I will commit suicide, and all the things, how to deal with this. And that's a really difficult thing, because this is somebody that you've been married to, and you definitely don't want them to go down that route. You just don't want anything you do to be linked to that. You have to consider, is he getting help with any mental health issues? Has he got family to support him? Something like that you can't control anyway. It's not in your control. If that person chooses to do that, you won't be able to stop them unless you're in the house and you see them. It's very difficult to control somebody else. We can only control what we do. And what you could do is, if you are going to take this step, and obviously if you do it with kindness, do it with empathy, do it slowly, do it compassionately, so that you are making this as easy as possible for him, because you do want to take his mental health into account. And he might need additional support through it. So you may need to alert family and friends so they can be that support for him. You may need to encourage him to get some help from his GP. But also it might be important for him to have a solicitor, so that there is that barrier between you and him, and somebody who can advise him. So that's a few things that I would say around that. I've got another private message. My husband has never looked after the children overnight and rarely looked after them without me being near. He isn't very tuned on or caring, and they don't like being with him for long. The most he's looked after them is a few hours. I have been a full-time parent for 10 years and home educate. I'm worried about the children being forced to be with him more than they can cope with. I would like to continue with him, only looking after them for a few hours at a time, once or twice a week, and some phone calls. Do you think that would be likely to be agreed if a judge decided? And this is difficult for me to answer. And often I need to know more. I need to really understand your situation. I need to understand safeguarding, how old the children are, and things like that before I can guide you properly. But the way to look at this is you need to balance certain things. Both parents have a right to have good quality time with their children. Obviously, there will be this question about he's never looked after them before. But when you go to court, or if you go to court, the courts do recognize that people can change. And even though he's not had them much in the past, he might be willing to learn. He might be willing to change up his work hours so he can support them fully. Maybe he does want to step up now that this is happening. We see it often where people do step up when this is happening, even though there might be two reasons for it. One is maybe to hurt you, and the other is actually they want to be a good parent and have a good quality parenting relationship with their children. So that's the first point. The second point is that you have to think about what's in the best interests of the children. And again, spending good quality time with both parents is in their best interest as long as they are safe, as long as you've thought about safeguarding and they're not at any risk of harm. But they have a right, and it's good for them to spend time with parents. But also it may be that if they're at risk, you need to think about how that contact happens. If you think he won't be able to cope, you might need a phased-in approach to give him a chance to learn. It might not be that it will be a few hours forever, but you do that and you slowly keep increasing as the children get used to it, as he gets used to it. Because if you've never done something before, it's really hard to jump straight in. But if somebody is willing to be a parent and they're safe, then it's definitely worth persevering, because it can be best for your children. So it's balancing all of these things and recognizing that sometimes people have different parenting styles. And that doesn't mean that the children are at harm. My ex and I have completely different parenting styles. In fact, we're completely different people. I'm surprised we even got married. But his style of parenting isn't necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily right, and neither is mine. We just deal with things differently. And I think the children get the benefit of that we're so different as people and that we parent differently. But what we found out very quickly is our children would manipulate us in the middle to get what they wanted, because they very quickly realized that we'd say this to mum and say this to dad, we'll get what we want. But we actually started communicating so that the children couldn't do that. And they soon learned that that isn't going to work. So I hope that helped. It was a general answer, but obviously I couldn't give you more detail. Good to see lots of you are moving, trying yoga, guided meditation. And the person that said I need to book an initial appointment with you, I would love to have a chat with you. So feel free to book that appointment. I'll need to go actually now, looking at the time. So I won't be able to answer the remaining questions, but feel free to come back next week. I'm glad that you found this helpful. I've seen your comments privately. And the person that messaged and needs a little bit of help, do come onto our calls that are at 1 o'clock, because then I can actually go into this in a bit more detail with you. So do let me know if you can come along to the 1 o'clock call, because we can go into this in a bit more detail. Okay, So I will leave that there and I will see you all next week. I'm off on a retreat tomorrow. I'll be traveling tonight, but there tomorrow. It's for women going through divorce to empower them and to guide them through gently through the divorce process as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be sharing more on social media. So do look out for that. And lovely to see you all. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to catching up with you next week. Do take care. Bye bye.